Going on, everybody? So back again with JP, Jonathan Pishner here of Apex Counseling. What we were looking to talk about is we came together with some really key themes we thought would help people. And this one came up as a big one. And it is when people do set goals, when they do find success in their life, but they end up actually being unhappy about it. Again, unhappiness and the despair and success. Most people do not realize how much despair may have to do with that, but also how it is actually expected and preventable if you know where to go to. So JP, kick it off, my man.
Yeah. So, there's a cultural myth that we have, especially in our culture, which is meeting goals is what creates your happiness. And this is, the little things and the big things. But man, so often you get people who they're like, man, once I become a lawyer, a doctor, or whatever, like that's the thing that's going to make me happy. Or, I'm going to get my degree, or I'm going to become I'm going to play college ball or pro ball. And the simple fact is that really happiness and goals are two separate things. They're not connected in that way. Happy people are more likely to meet their goals, but just the simple act of meeting goals doesn't create happiness. And the despair of success often happens when people have this goal and they think once they get there that like the magical clouds open, you're sitting in that beam of light and it's like, oh, now I'm happy. And then when that doesn't happen, man, that really messes with people in some pretty big ways.
Yeah, I think what a lot of it is, people have this idea to where they feel like progress and improvement is going to be linear. And it's the same thing with success. Like it's just simply if you do the right things, you just work your way there. You keep getting closer and you keep getting better. But then once you achieve it, they think it's going to be just a new platform. Like they think you're going to continue to either stay at that level or continue to go upwards, wherever you want to go. Like they don't realize that that nothing is linear, and whatever improvements you're trying to make, whatever feelings you were trying to work towards, whether those of like accomplishment, health, confidence, whatever it might be, then just simply doing it once doesn't mean that you are now there forever. Like you have to actually work and continue to do something to get you there. And as soon as you either let off on that, or again, just simply get there and realize like, okay, what now? Then that's almost like an invitation to your body or in your mind to start reverting a little bit if it hasn't gotten what it thought it's going to find. Hi, Maggie. I got a little hi, Jerry in the thing.
So, you were saying some stuff earlier, kind of about like the dopamine hits people get out of like the goal stuff. That's probably valuable to talk about.
Yeah, it's huge because when people achieve goals, like they get a big hit of dopamine, which is one of the main hormones in the brain and the body, which make you feel good. It makes you feel excited. It just makes you feel like good. There's really no other way. Like it's an easy way to put it. But what happens is it is a chemical and it is going to wear off. And as much as some people don't like to think of how much, like our emotions are based on chemicals, dopamine and happiness are very strongly related. And if it wears off, then that feeling of elation is also going to wear off unless you've tied it to something else. And what actually happens, what they found is that dopamine to humans is actually released more from the progress of a hunt, so to speak, than by actually fulfilling the hunt itself. Like you get that big burst then, but making progress and being there is like the thrill of the chase is what actually gives you the most dopamine, which again makes sense when you realize these things were created so that we would want to continue like hunting and finding food, so like the hunt is like we're literally wired so that looking for things and working towards things makes us feel better about ourselves than after having achieved that thing. And so like once we realize, oh man, like I'm literally wired so that achieving the goal gives me a hit, but then wears off. Whereas constantly simply having that feeling of working towards something actually continues to give me that feeling of happiness.
Yeah, yeah. So as you're talking, it sounds like you're kind of working towards reconstructing something like in the field of psychology, because so there's the idea of like mistaken goals and guiding fictions, and so like a great example of that, and I'll use this one because literally everyone knows somebody like this. Let's take the example of make a lot of money, whether that's $1 million or whatever it is. That is a mistaken goal, because usually when people want that, they don't actually want the money. They want what they imagine the money gives them, freedom or a lifestyle or whatever. But people can kind of fall into a trap where they think that they're chasing the money. And so when they get there, they don't get the big dopamine hit that they would have hoped for. And it leads them to go down the wrong path of figuring out how to be happy then, because then they're like, well, okay, maybe $1 million wasn't enough. Now I need 2. Now I need 5. And I use this example because everyone knows someone who accidentally sold their soul for money and stopped spending time with their kids and stopped, chasing the stuff that really mattered to them because they lost sight of it. And they fell into what was basically a dopamine trap. Because when it comes to happiness, dopamine's important, but it's not the only chemical, because you got serotonin, you got oxytocin, you got endorphins. And what social media companies have figured out is how to hack your dopamine system, which is why you keep staring at Facebook, and Instagram, and all that stuff. And you basically keep hitting the heroin button. But there's so much more that goes into how happiness works as far as goals. And so people get a lot unbalanced precisely because they chase that dopamine hit. And especially then once they get to the end, they don't get probably this huge hit that their system was expecting. And then they're bereft. It's like, oh, shoot, what do I do now?
Yeah, for the people listening, we're both on the same page. Like having goals, whether specific or even just generally defined as something you generally want to improve, is important in making that specific progress. Like I said, you pretty much need to have a path to get better at specific things. But so like we're saying, achieving that end goal, it's because of those hits, it can wear off and basically end up left in that, what do I do now? Like you said, like if you don't realize,
it's probably good to point that out because you're right. I think we were sounding a little bit like we were ripping on goals.
It's the fact that when you're done, it has the potential to leave that. What do I do now? Like you said, using the example of the person looking for that money and thinking, I'm going to sacrifice right now, make that $1 million. And like you said, whether they realize it or not, they're sacrificing family time, relationships, other self-fulfilling things, whatever it may be. If they hit that $1 million, like you said, when it's not that light beam of immediate, like permanent happiness, like you said, then it's like, well, now what do I do? They're much more likely to go right back to what they think they were looking for, to search for that dopamine and that feeling, than instead use the overall improved situation they could have created from their goal, and then actually go back and bring back the relationship status or just the rest of their life. To me, like one of the ones, I don't know where I came up with this or not even analogy, but it was just like a direct vision for me was the old Greek mythological character of Sisyphus, who was the guy who's, I don't even remember what he did wrong.
Rolling the stone up the hill, is that
exactly? Yeah, it's I don't remember what he did wrong, but something to make the gods mad. And so for the rest of eternity, he has to roll that giant boulder up the mountain, and every time he gets close, it rolls all the way back down. And that's pretty much what your brain is almost acting on anytime anytime it loses idea of what makes it feel good. It's just going to keep rolling you back to the routine that you were in before, and the comfort that it feels because it doesn't necessarily want to do anything new to improve the status. It's afraid.
So in service of making the idea of like, don't connect goals and happiness, like in service of making that actionable, let me suggest a formula, because you had talked about a couple of things that really fit nicely within that formula. So happiness does not equal like meeting our goals. That's not the right formula. Happiness is basically pleasure plus meaning plus engagement. If a person has those three things, generally happiness is very accessible. So, and the reason I bring up happiness before goals is usually happy people get their goals met way more readily and easily. So if you can get happiness, you're way more likely to meet your goals. But you had said some stuff where I was thinking about my formula, and I was like, okay, I shouldn't call it my formula. I got it from somewhere else. So yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I liked it. I can't remember the name, the author's name, I'd say it. But but you sent me some stuff, and I was like, oh, okay. There's the engagement. There's meaning. There's pleasure. So like you had some pretty specific examples of like, like making sure there's change and novelty, risk, like some of that stuff.
Yeah, like every time that you're looking for, like most people want to improve in something, even if they're not thinking of that word, like you said, like you said, whether it's more money, a better situation at work, a better relationship with their kids, their partner, their family, just friends in general, anything like that. Like it's an improvement and change, whether it's goal-based or not. But improvement and goals need change. Change is new. By definition, change is new. New is risky to the brain. Like like risky is dangerous. And then dangerous means that survival is not certain. We're no longer like really in the situation where survival literally means life or death, nearly as often as it used to for most of human history. But our brain doesn't really, like our brain is still relatively caught back. Again, like modern life is still just such a small chunk of time in human existence that our brains still focus a lot more on when survival was a much bigger deal. So anything that means danger to it and the survival's not certain, such as after a goal, like such as even if you reach a goal, if you don't have a plan to just continue on that process or something new, your brain's still thinking, man, I made it this far, but how much longer can I get lucky like this? It's like I got out of my comfort zone, but I'm going to go ahead and try to go back to where I feel safe again. So if you don't have something, like if you haven't developed the mindset or like that realization of being happy without always achieving your goals, like, or being happy on your way to achieving goals, then your brain is much more likely to put you right back where it was, because even with the goal achieved, it just doesn't want that risk. Like your brain is terrified of risk because that is new and that means dangerous. You have to actually overcome that consciously.
Well, hold on. Let's say that a little more precisely, because the brain isn't fully terrified of change and risk. Because if we think of pleasure meaning engagement, risk is engaging. It's not pleasurable. So the brain resists on pleasure, but actually risk is extremely engaging. That's exactly why you see teenagers like want to drive their car 90 miles an hour down the road, because it pulls you into a state of being fully engaged.
I thought about that. Yeah.
So like, yeah, on the absolute macro level, a lot of people have difficulty with risk, but it's not fully terrifying to our brain. So actually the brain needs a little novelty and risk to get the happiness formula right. And happily, it doesn't have to be crazy stuff like, driving 125. It can be controlled risk. Like, for me, who's had back problems, even like, trying to deadlift 375 is kind of a risk. So it's like fully engaging my brain to just do something as simple as that. People will resist risk, but it actually is an important component of the happiness factor.
So basically, like the solution, it seems, or like one of the things we're saying, one of the solutions to just be aware of that possible despair, or I said, and really just create your life almost in a way to where it won't happen, or at least you minimize it, is to make the positive attributes of like any improved behavior or goal setting that you're trying to achieve, make those like kind of the real fixtures of your life, your routine, rather than, like I said, the end goal being the only thing that you look at. I said, like, all the things that will get you to that goal, or I said, to get you to that just improved situation, make that the part that you're really actually putting value into. And like you said, you'll be happier, and then you'll actually end up with a greater chance of success as is. And then when you do reach that goal, hopefully, or reach other goals, then you have a much greater chance at like continuing to improve and continuing the positive aspects of it. I know you mentioned like creating processes to maximize like each of those three things in the happiness equation: the pleasure, the engagement, and the meaning. Would basically be one of the keys to make sure that you can maximize both the happiness and the goals.
Yeah, and I want to make sure to like point out. So when you're developing a way to have both happiness and working on your goals, there's a lot of self-awareness that goes into this. I'm going to pick on the money example again, just because it's so easy to pick on. Knowing why you want the thing you want is desperately important, because that goes into meaning. So like,
knowing why. Yep.
Yeah, because you work with so many athletes. I'm sure, like, there's a bunch of people you've worked with that want to be in the NFL. They want to do this or that. Being in touch with why, and if it's just because you want to have a Super Bowl ring one day, that's fine. But like being in touch with why do I want what I want? Because as you're figuring out, okay, how do I make a process that's going to get me to my goal and help me be happy? A lot of us really are conditioned to pretend to want things we don't really want.
That's huge.
My field's a great example. You ask people like, oh, why did you want to become a counselor? You'll get a lot of real answers, but then sometimes you'll get like answers of like, just what people, should want. Oh, I just want to help as many people as I can. I got into counseling because I love helping people, and also I just happen to do it very easily. So in a way, this is almost like a lazy job for me, because I just happen to be talented at it, and then I went to school and got skilled at it too. But I wanted to be able to do something helpful, but not have to like break my brain over it. Like brain surgery would be hard for me. Like that would be.
I'm really glad you said that, because I don't think people realize how many jobs are out there that probably have that. Like you said, like people have the completely wrong idea of what the job is like, so they go into it. Well, like never thought about this before. Like there's tons of data out there about how many was like 84% of people don't go into a field using their college degree, like something ridiculous like that. And yeah, part of that is job market, but a lot of that too is like people get there and they're like, yeah, like this is not actually what I thought it was going to be when I went through it, but I just kind of went through, like finished it anyway, or got to the process, but it's not what I want to do.
Yeah, mistaken goals. People realized halfway through that it's a bad goal, but then sunk cost fallacy kicked in. They're like, oh man, I already spent 10 grand on this degree. I better just now do the wrong thing for 40 years of my life. And yeah, so when you're developing a process, be honest with yourself. What do I like? What do I find meaning in? Like, there's a lot of people who they're like, man, counseling is a great gig, but I would not find that meaningful. Great. Go do things that are meaningful to you. And then, what's engaging? Like the stuff you find engaging, I probably wouldn't. I hate ice baths. Like,
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I can dump it in when I'm in there, but watching you actually sink down in that tub already filled with ice, I'm like, nah, I'm good. That's
surrounded by snow. That's something spiritual. I can't explain it.
Hey, but see, the cool thing is being able to acknowledge for you, and then me being able to be like, you know what, I'm glad he finds that engaging, not me. So, and then of course, like, notice I'm saying this like it's easy, like I'll just develop a process. You build these over the course of time. Like, I'm 30, whatever the hell, 37 now. I've been developing my process for 15 years. So it's easy for me to have days where I'm both working towards my goals and being happy. My concern would be that there's a lot of people who are like 18 and wouldn't realize that, like, oh, I'm not going to have a perfect happiness and goal-oriented process next week. Like, you got to try stuff, figure it out. It changes over time. There's a lot that goes into it, but the overall thing would be make a process that helps you get there.
Yeah, it is definitely a constant process. And it's that probably one of the best lessons I think that anybody can learn for this in the long term. It is just that realization. And, man, this is we have so many other topics we can dive into, but is like the way failure helps this, because again, it's like anything you try that gets you even remotely in that direction, that gets you moving towards that direction of being happy with yourself, being happy with what you're doing, being happy with the decisions you're making, anything like that. You're going to have points where, like it falls apart. The universe throws a wrench in it. Something just straight up fails. And again, that's part of that goes back to things not being linearly better. Like I said, like it'll be ups and downs. But once you can reach a situation or a mindset where every time that happens, you're like, I still got better today. Okay, that happened. I learned from it, or, I got stronger from it. I know what not to do. Anything like that. When you can finally internalize that, like those things as meaning that you simply got better in a different way. You learned a way not to do something. Like that's probably one of the biggest internal lessons somebody can learn to actually help with the overall quest for happiness is that, like failure is okay. That, like anytime, like sadness is okay. Like frustration's okay. Just keep moving with it.
Yeah. So man, I feel like we've wandered all over the place. So I'm going to summarize my points in like 2 sentences, just to like bring it back, because man, we picked a big topic today, I guess. So if I had to summarize my ideas around this, goals do not lead to happiness. They're 2 separate things, and happiness is created with meaning, pleasure, and engagement. If you can get that, your goals become much easier. That's probably like my summary of kind of my ideas around this, just so that it's digestible.
I'm actually going to use a quote right here by one of our listeners, friend of mine named Alexander Armour. I got to tell you a quick story about this guy. So this guy's nickname is Tank. It's like literally Tank. He is an adaptive athlete, meaning like to the furthest sense of the word. Like this guy's amazing. He's got his own foundation called the GIMP Style Foundation, helping adaptive athletes around.
I think you've posted about him before. I
like does strongman, Highland events, base jumping, like all those things from a wheelchair. Again, it's like, so he understands it. And he wrote right here, he's like, love of the journey makes the destination both more enjoyable and not just the end. Like love of the journey makes the destination both more enjoyable and not the end. And that is so clutch. That's exactly what you said about the why. Like as soon as you know why you're like, if you can really define why you want something to like how you think it'll improve you, then at that point, simply knowing every single day that you're getting in that direction will gives you that emotional support and that emotional sense of like just internal relief and happiness.
Yeah, and learning to craft a journey that you can love, because like, man, that brings up a really easy example for me. So I do all the bodybuilding stuff, and there's a lot of different training methods we've sampled. There's one that works wonderfully and would get me massive gains, but it is so miserable that I cannot enjoy the journey.
I know exactly what you're talking about. The feeling.
Yeah, we'll throw it in for 2 weeks and like, go ahead and take our medicine for a couple of weeks, but then we got to get off of it again because it makes the journey so horrible that we couldn't even enjoy getting anywhere with it.
So, yeah. Well, as always, man, like I said, like I'm stoked by these. Like these always get me fired up as we're talking about it beforehand, and then actually doing it. Like I said, like I mean, this is one of those things where I know just the two of us could be having this conversation over coffee and be fired up. So just really glad to be able to have people here. And again, like those of you guys,
maybe we'll do that one day. Maybe we'll just take a phone into the coffee shop one day when COVID's over, just like see what happens.
That'll be awesome. Everybody joining in again. Thanks for the comments. That's awesome. Maggie, Alex, Dane, Stephanie. Like, and we'll be back here in a couple of weeks again. So again, everybody, JP Apex Counseling, give him a follow at Apex Counseling. He puts a lot of great stuff on the Apex Counseling Facebook. So a lot of very useful things too.
Shooting a video for it right after this, as a matter of fact.
There you go, like that. And again, Jerry here, Viking Performance, and I'll catch everybody later.
Thanks, guys.